Hello, everybody. Welcome to MVP conference, and we're gonna talk about how we can use our Azure skills to develop for Office 365. So we're gonna build that road from Azure to Office 365. A little information about myself. So my name is Ashish. I am Microsoft MVP in Office Development Stack. So in Office Development Stack, we talk about the Office 365 extensibility, whether it's SharePoint, Exchange, and building the application for different mobile application platforms or building the applications which leverage Azure services. You can email me on ashish at 365share.info. That will reach to me on my Office 365 account. And if you have any questions, you can tweet me on at the rate of underscore AshishTrivedi. Feel free to buzz me anytime if you have any questions on this session. So, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk about as what is Azure and how Office 365 sits on top of Azure. Because you may know already as how the things are in Azure, but we're gonna look at very high level, not a deep dive as what all the services are there and how they work. Then we're going to talk about what is Office 365. So in Office 365, we're going to talk about what services we have, and we're going to show a difference as a perception that Office 365 is not just SharePoint. A lot of friends had that perception previously, but not anymore. That developing Office 365 is developing for SharePoint. Then, after understanding what is Azure and how it works, and what is Office 365, how it works, what services are there, we're going to talk about as how they sit together and deliver the best software as a service platform to us. But always when it comes to the development, we look at the opportunities as how we can build custom code and where we should deploy those custom codes to extend the platform. So whether it's Azure or Office 365. And in the third point, we will explore as how those are working together, and we will use that cross collaboration between the pr- products to build cross collaborative products in the platforms. Then I'm going to show you some references as how you can quickly get started on. And at the end, we will take up the questions. Feel free to push your questions in the window or tweet me up, and I will be happy to reply after the session. So first thing first, what is Azure? So as you know, Azure is a cloud service which provides you three different types of services: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. Based on what you choose to build your software systems or build your products, you have to manage some of this stuff. So as you see here, the green icon is managed by vendors and the blue icons are managed by you. So if you choose software as a service, you literally don't manage anything, and everything is managed by vendor. So vendor will manage your networking, storage, server, operating system, or anything behind the scene. You will just go and consume the service. And that's very important for us to understand as how the software as a service works, because Office 365 is software as a service managed by Microsoft and given to customer as a tenancy model, and we just consume the service and we pay for it. While it may be using behind the scene infrastructure somewhat and platform somewhat, but that's not our focus area at the moment. We are focusing only software as a service portion of Azure. So when we go and talk about Office 365, and as I mentioned in the over agenda slide, Office 365 is not just SharePoint. It used to be one of the core pillar of Office 365 when it was very much in the beginning, around approximately 7 years back. There were just Exchange, Skype for Business or Link and SharePoint in Office. That time SharePoint was one of the biggest collaboration content platform, which can be customized easily in Office 365. So when somebody says developing for Office 365 was developing for SharePoint, but now there are a lot of services available which you can customize in Office 365 and build applications. When we talk about applications, we talk about business applications, not really specific applications. So when you think in Office 365, you have onboarding, offboarding, which primarily deals with your Azure AD. You can build applications which can help you to do the onboarding and offboarding of your employees. The other scenario can be your shared mailboxes, receiving an email. You need to trigger some information based on that email or process that email using automation tools. You can write for Exchange as well. There are very few on the Sky for Business, but still it's a platform and you can extend that using your code. Now that comes the favorite part, SharePoint. SharePoint is one of the large platform options available where every organization do the content and collaboration management on the SharePoint, and a lot of developers customize it to work with the business. And that's obviously one of the options which you can customize in Office 365. One graph for business is a personal storage, but there are some options available for customization, like using custom file handler. You can manage your custom files using the webhooks or the difference in the information. You can trigger information for the users. These are the very much around developer tools as how you write those programs, how you extend your platform. But Microsoft has released a lot of no-code solutions like Microsoft Flow, Power Apps, and you can use those to build your applications. Microsoft Stream, Project Online, and Power BI, Planner, Groups, and the things goes on. And you can even customize Office Pro Plus, basically the Office client applications as well, using the new Office add-in models. So literally, if you see, you can customize everything in Office 365. So it's not just SharePoint which you're customizing every bit of it. And I'm sure when you do these, you're not really worrying where is your infrastructure, how it is the topology of the infrastructure, what are all the services you have to extend, how you have to extend in the platform. These are all software as a service. So your program is gonna just consume the information from Office 365 and extend it. Now let's understand the approach. The approach is important here because in Azure, the development, when we do, it depends on what is the end point. So if we are developing some Azure web-based apps or APIs, the end product is to build some website basically, which will allow us to trigger some actions, do some operations, store that data into databases. The same way in Office 365, you really not worry about as where the storage is, where how the information is structured, because you define that automatically in your objects which are already existing, like Azure AD user object. Now let's look at different options or approaches we can provide in Office 365 for development. So first one is add-ins model. Um, Add-ins model is nothing but about customization from SharePoint or building some components like Office add-ins, which will run in context of application. So if you are building Office add-ins which will run in Exchange or Outlook add-in which will run in Exchange or Office add-ins which will run in Office client applications or online or building in SharePoint, they run in context and they work well and they are loosely coupled. So the style you develop them is loosely coupled from the application. You can develop them. They have a fair flexibility to consume and develop. The cost of impact in the short and long term is medium. So basically they are pretty much supported, and I don't see any road map or information where they won't be supported in near future. But in Azure, you might have not written a program to extend any existing service. You write around external services or the external apps, or it could be a single page app or a website or a Xamarin app, which will extend that information using Azure as a platform. The same way in Office 365, you develop external applications on Office 365, and they have a good flexibility approach because they are always loosely coupled. You manage your application, you don't manage your Office 365 side of things. And the objects which Office 365 provide as a data and services, they will not change because they are the standard objects. So when you are developing for Office 365, we call them as Office 365 extensibility, and you can program uh, the Office 365 APIs in your preferred application platform or type of application. So something like I am looking to write a iOS Xamarin app, I can consume Office 365 services and bring that information across by using the same authentication mechanism with Azure AD. Now, how the Azure skills map to the Office 365? Now, you might have seen Azure Logic apps. That's around the sequential workflow process. And Microsoft Flow is a nice wrap around top of Azure Logic apps and works well. You can, as the way you work with Azure Logic apps and Azure Functions and other things, you can do the same thing with Microsoft Flow as well. By default, and your Azure applications do the ADAL or MSAL based authentication. The same applies to Office 365. So your authentication is same for both the side of the information. Your web apps, your web jobs are the same, and they represent like a timer service or timer jobs or a provider hosted model where you are writing something which is out of the context of SharePoint or the Office 365, and they are just running by consuming those data and services. Your CDN that works well. You can deploy your SX to a CDN, whether it's a public or private, and consume that. Your webhooks, any change notifications, you can track that, you can access it, and parse that information and process it accordingly. Your Azure functions are very well supported in Office 365, so they present a very well scenario of reusability and on-demand basis. They're very cheap. They're not like web apps or web jobs keep running and you hook them up. Your bot services are there, and Office 365 Teams provide the same bot to be extended on the Teams. So you develop bots on Azure, but you can just extend it straight away for Teams as well. And that's where you leverage your existing skills for the Office 365. Now, the reference wise, I can just give you one link here, developer.microsoft.com slash enus slash office. I'm going to show back this to you. So I'm going to jump back on my browser here. So if I go and hit dev.office.com, you might be wondering the URL was developer.office.com, developer.microsoft.com slash office. Why I'm going to dev.office.com. This used to be the URL which we was very easy to remember, and when we hit it, now it goes to the same point. Yeah, developer.microsoft.com slash office. Now here you will see as explore, you understand, you look at the GTM, you look at the verticals where the office development is happening. As a product wise, when you look at it, so you have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, which are primarily defining your Office add-ins and Outlook add-ins. Then you have your Microsoft Teams, OneDrive, Project, SharePoint, Skype, Visio, Extensibility. Now, this is very wide platform. So if you would like to learn about these, you can look at some documentations, you can look at some code samples, events as well. So there are a lot of events happening by the Office development community, driven by my MVPs and other community leaders. So you can go and join them as well there if they are happening in your city as well. So you can get start networking and have a connection so that when you have a question or an idea, you can validate it straight away. They write blogs as well, so you can see what's happening new and what's coming down, so that you can prepare yourself or your projects to leverage the latest technologies. There is a very good pattern and practices team. They are primarily around SharePoint at the moment, but that defines as how Microsoft is working with community to provide solutions to customer and partners. And PNP is a great example of that. Then there is a dev program. So what happens when you write for Office 365? You definitely need an Office 365 tenant. You need to understand what tools are required, how to configure them, how to set up them, and then at the end you will need, for individual products, what things I need to do. So developer program will provide you a 365 days. So developer program will provide you a 365 days, basically a year, free subscription in Office 365 with a developer tenant, and you can test everything in that tenant and keep your code ready. And along with that, you will get information about what's happening in the Office 365 development world, and you will get some newsletters as well out of it. Now, if you look at the website here, you have those links as links as sorry, icons as a link to those pages, and then you have the same information here as well. And currently there are boot camps happening, so you can see that they're driving boot camps as well. The Microsoft Graph is one of the API for Microsoft Office 365, which is picking up very well. And it's a single unified API to develop for Office 365, and it's REST based. So you can consume REST services very easily and process your information. There's some examples given here as how the Office development has helped customers in varying sectors or verticals to build solutions. Now, so with that information, you can kickstart your development work. If you know the basics of the development in Azure, it is not stopping you to start something developing for Office 365. So, so, so what you can do for Office 365, you can look at the mapping and start moving your skills towards Office 365, or keep both. Office 365 now supports a lot of sources, things like Angular, React, Knockout, and the products which we are writing as a customization now depends on those open source products. A lot of things in Office 365 are REST based now. There is no individual API in JavaScript or a C# program. So you can consume easily those REST API in your server side or a client side code, and you can build those solutions. As I mentioned, the Microsoft Graph is a REST-based API. You can consume that always, and that is one of the single endpoint REST-based API for all the things behind in Office 365. So at the end, I would like to thank you for listening to me. And if you have questions, feel free to jump in. I hope this was helpful to you, and you will start writing some programs on Office 365 as well. Thank you.